Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Would you please rise for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you everybody for coming. We will need a motion to approve or amend the meeting agenda.
Madam Chairman, I move that we approve the meeting agenda as given.
Thank you, John. Any comments, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Now we're at public comments on agenda items. Do we have any, Jackie?
No.
No. Okay, school board member comments. I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say.
Do you want to go first? Sure. Well, do I have to stand up or anything?
No, you can just speak into the mic right there. That will help.
The leadership at the high school is running a hygiene drive right now, and we'll be running a food drive in May. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you. Very cool.
I've also heard that FFA is doing their flower drive in May, I believe, and DECA is still doing volunteer events at the Salmon Center, so we're
All right.
busy.
Cool. Nice.
Great, thanks guys. Hey, if you have pictures, when you're at those events, if you send them to Jackie, we'll get them on the website.
Awesome. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, board member comments. John, do you have anything?
No, I don't. I feel kind of out of it.
Well, you're in it. You're in it right now, so it's okay.
Yeah, but I mean, connected to the school, our schedule and everything.
Right.
So, not being able to be there in person. But no, I don't have anything to say. So.
Okay, thank you. Art.
I don't have very much, but just wanted to mention I'm not getting involved, I've always been involved, but I'm dealing with some North Mason Scholarship Foundation things, the budget and that sort of stuff. And also, of course, I'm starting to, I'm the treasurer, I'm starting to get the checks from groups that give scholarships out to kids. And of course, I got a couple checks from Laura just now that are part of that. In any case, that's beginning to happen, and that's gets a lot of stuff coming, a lot of funds coming in for kids' scholarships, plus also the Scholarship Foundation itself is going to be giving out lots of scholarships, or the largest amount they expect this year that they've ever given away. We'll see how that turns out. So that's what I've been doing on the side there. I have not had a chance to come into the schools. As I think I mentioned last time, the internet where I live, I have two internets, and you all know that. There's the Girl Scouts internet, which is on a satellite, but the Girl Scouts completely hold that so that the only computer that can use that is my work computer. And they won't let anyone else in on it, and they block it and that sort of stuff, and it's because it's a cost factor. Anyway, but I cannot do school business on that. And so having the school computer there, the other internet connection I have is DSL. And as Ashley knows, really stinks. It stinks so bad that I can't do any work there. So I was hoping to come in here to be able to get any emails that were coming, but I didn't have a chance this last month. So after this meeting, I'll be catching up. So there's that going on. However, the other wrinkle to that is yesterday and today and the day before yesterday, the PUD3 came in and has talked to me again, and they're starting the tree trimming part, and they've got the wires coming in to bring cable to where I'm at. Although they say it's going to be at least a month before they're finished, and then the Girl Scouts, who are in control of all this and are paying for it, have said, well, our budget isn't going to probably handle this until next fiscal year. So the cable will probably sit there for a while, not being able to be connected up. Oh well, this is how it goes. Is there anything else I need to bring up?
I don't know.
If I can just comment on the scholarship committee stuff too, because I was meeting with the high school today, and they're really excited about meeting with some senior class leaders tomorrow to plan graduation. and to plan the student award night that we do. And we're, they're thinking about, can we do it we might be able to do the student award night in the gym with the number of people who attend that, or outside, and still have that event very much like we normally do.
Oh, that's awesome.
So they're very excited about hopefully getting to talk some more about that.
Yeah.
And still have everybody masked and
Right.
6 feet apart and following all the rules. So that could be really exciting.
That is exciting.
That'll be great.
Leanna?
Well, we're just getting used to doing school 2 days on, 3 days off, on and off, doing homework at home, and now they're doing paper homework, as well as they can go online. They can either turn it in online or they can turn it in person, in paper. And then they have online for all the help that they need for those 3 days to go over all the different things. And we struggled a little bit. Parents should know they're not alone if there's some struggles, because it's tough. And it comes along with not having a teacher there 5 days a week. You don't know, or just us not being in the classroom as parents, we don't know what kind of mental health that they have to deal with when kids get bummed out, and a lot of the kids were bummed out in the beginning, and they've been really good at turning around and coming back. And then a lot of kids, like my child, was very, very flexible in the beginning, and he got really bummed out towards the end here. So it's a little bit backwards. So we took some time for mental health. We took some, and it's hard for physical time too when we're working and doing this. So he's now working out at a dojo. So then he just started it today. So he's excited, and we call it Camp Watkins at my sister's house. So he goes and plays with his cousin, and they go do dojo on Thursday nights. So very cool.
Okay, well, thank you. Arla?
I had a chance to listen in a little bit on the levy committee meeting this last week. Seems like that group is just moving along pretty well and communicating. And there was a lot of great information shared last night. Thanks to Ashley and Dana. So it'll be interesting to see that come forward when it does, if and when it does. I don't really have anything else. I think this was last month, but I did attend virtually the Wrinkle in Time Zoom. I think that was toward the end of last month. So, and that was pretty cool to see the kids come together and pull that off. So,
Yeah. Great. Well, I too have been involved in reviewing scholarship notebooks, and I was pleasantly surprised with yours, Aaliyah. It was awesome. And quite a few of them were really awesome. So I'm really pleased that, given the times and the circumstances we're under, we still have seniors who are making that effort to get those scholarship notebooks together, because it does mean a lot of money for many. Art, did you have something else?
When you're done.
Oh, okay. And I too have been listening in on the levy committee, and I just wish that everyone could hear the presentations that Ashley has been giving to try and educate people about how school funding works and how the state controls how we spend our money, as well as the feds. And it's just, it's interesting to me, even though I've heard it many times, but every time I hear it, I just think, wow, we just don't have very much control over the money that comes to the school district other than the levy funds. So I'm really, I'm appreciative of how well you and Dana both described all of that last night. It was interesting, and I think there's still a lot of question marks for a lot of people, and I'm hoping that they'll call and get those answered. Other than that, I was shocked when I went in to look at the scholarship notebooks and looked into the commons, where all the chairs are facing one way, 6 feet apart, with numbers on the back of them. And all I could think of was, my gosh, this is really institutional. But they're getting it done, and I'm really impressed with how hard all of the buildings are working to meet all of the demands of the protocols. What was it, Art, you had?
Wanted to mention, I should have mentioned earlier, I don't do Facebook, even though my wife has a Facebook page on me. But I went to Facebook by accident on the school district site because I really wanted to see Director Shepherd-Bull's letter, which I read. Great job on that, but in particular, there was something you brought up in there that is worth bringing up again because it was something else that I got involved in, and that was you brought up the whole issue of by not having a passed levy, we're not getting the state forest funds, which we all learned from Ashley last month. In any case, I monthly attend, these days it's Zoom, and I get to do this on the Girl Scout computer because it is part of my job. I attend the monthly DNR forest users meeting, call it that. It's usually always the first Thursday evening of the month. And I brought that issue up to them, and it turns out that the DNR staff, and there's usually 5 or 6 DNR staff in on the meeting, plus all these, motorcycle clubs, hiking clubs, whatever, the user groups in the forest that meet there. And so this can be anywhere, 20, 30 people. I brought it up to them, and they were not aware. The DNR staff, along with all of the users there, were not aware of that issue also. So I brought it up to them, and they thanked me and said, we didn't know that. And this in particular is the DNR chief. You would think that they would know that, but on the other hand, it's understandable that they don't. Their job is to do the work and not necessarily pay attention to who's getting the money. In any case, that's what I wanted to bring up. So,
Thank you.
I have a question. The presentations that were very well explained, and you said I wish that everybody could see that, are we going to have something like
They're
that?
posted. They're
for the-
posted.
They're all posted.
Okay.
On the
On
website.
the
Okay, that's what I was wondering if it's just, okay.
Yeah.
Where are they on the site?
On the Macy's.
Jackie posts all the videos with the presentations in them, so you can
Yeah,
hear.
and I can share it on like my Facebook, my school Facebook,
They're
and
posted
then
on Facebook or on our website?
On
or the link to it.
the school district
Yeah.
website?
Jackie?
Yes, the school district website, and it's under the,
Levy info?
it's under the district and then levy info.
I see it.
Okay.
And I've been putting every recording of the levy committee meetings onto that.
Thank you. I see it.
That would be great.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And now we're at consent items. And this is the agenda that enables the board to efficiently deal with matters that have been delegated to the superintendent, but by law must be approved by the board. Items on the consent agenda are voted upon as one block and approved with one vote. An item may be removed from the consent agenda only upon approval of a majority of the board. So I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda. I just have one question on the transportation surplus.
Do you want that removed, or we'll talk about that in discussion?
We can talk about it in discussion. It
Okay.
doesn't need to be
So we
removed.
have a motion, and now is there any discussion?
My question was just, let me pull this up here, but a little bit of explanation on the bus depreciation schedule and what the benefit is of lowering the ratio of spare buses.
Yes, normally Ashley would answer that, but since Maureen's here to give a report tonight, we'll let her do that.
So, generally, our big buses, the depreciation schedule is 13 years. So the state pays us a portion of the bus each year for 13 years.
Okay.
And then we no longer get money for those buses. For the small buses, it's an 8-year depreciation schedule. And so, as you can see, the buses that are on the surplus schedule well exceed their depreciation life. And they're not being utilized, so they're sitting, and I want us to be using our buses. And so, rather than having them sit there, it's better for us to surplus them and be able to put the funds into our CDF towards, to be able to save up for new buses,
I see.
than it is to have them sitting there and not being utilized.
Well, and if they
Because
sit there,
getting parts and stuff
you
is
still have to get them
hard.
inspected.
Correct, and that's the other piece, is that any buses that are on site, if we're gonna transport students in them, they have to be inspected every year, which means we have to keep them up to the state standard for safety of transport for students.
So we don't need them right now, we're not using them
We're
at
not
the
using
moment.
them, and even when we get back to the number of routes we had last year, will still be, that's what the spare ratio is based off of, last year's route numbers.
Mhm.
So not the routes we're running this year that are a little bit less, but actual last year's when we were at full operations. So that's what I'm basing the spare ratio off of.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right. All in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed? And the consent agenda is approved. And now we are at the transportation report. I think you're back on.
You're back on.
Very interesting.
And super informal this time, you don't have to stand at the podium.
No.
Hi. I'll just talk loud.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so I was asked to give a report on our walk zones and the students that we have in them that are actually riding the bus due to the hazardous conditions of those walk zones and unable for them to be able to walk. So at the high school, you'll see that we have 27 students in the walk zone, and 55% of that 27 are taking the bus because they cannot walk to school. Now, they might be getting driven by connections, but they're eligible to ride the bus due to the lack of the upper campus. They would have to cross a 50-mile-an-hour highway, and there's no crosswalks, there's no lights, no flashing signs, and it's not a school zone right outside of the school on those highways, so it's really unsafe for them to be able to get to us in a safe manner. So our job as transportation is to make sure they get there safely so that we pick them up by the bus. For Hawkins Middle School, so next slide, they have 27 students and 77% of them can be on the bus for the same reason, same highways. And what you see on the maps is the blue area is our walk zone that's within 1 mile of the school. And the orange is the students that are actually walking to school. So that is the area of that 1 mile that we can actually have them walking.
Wow.
Next slide, so Belfair Elementary, this is the one area where we actually have a 1 mile area where students can walk because there is sidewalks from Belfair Elementary to Belfair Street. So there's sidewalks, it's lit, lots of nice wide sidewalks too. But there's 90 students within the 1 mile walk zone for Belfair Elementary, and we still have 41% of them able to ride the bus because they're from Belfair Elementary to 106. So the other side where it's curvy roads, no sidewalks, not lit, things like that. So there's still a lot of kids on the bus. For Sand Hill Elementary, there's 204 students in the walk zone, and 100% of them are eligible for being on the bus due to lack of sidewalks, lack of lighting, and not great shoulders.
road.
Even though it's a 25 miles an hour through parts of the coves, it's not the safest area to walk in because there's nowhere to walk except in the street. And we don't want kindergartners doing that. And then the other piece is that the school zone itself for Sand Hill, there's one sign now for the school zone at Sand Hill. It just says, it's a bright yellow sign that says school zone. That's it. It doesn't lower the speed down from 35 to 20 in front of the school anymore.
Why?
It's not until you get beyond the school.
The county changed that.
Do they lower it down to 20 for a playground, for the ball fields. But in front of the school is no longer 20 miles an hour.
Oh, wow.
Why? Yeah.
The
It used to be
county,
7 days
the
a
county
week.
made that
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah,
When did they make that decision?
I'll tell you, when I was on that board, I was against it completely and would not let them change it with my vote, and then I left. So I'm just, that makes me mad.
We have 204 students in the walk zone for Sand Hill. That equates to 3 buses within the code when we're operating normally.
Okay, I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, I do too.
But first, a little comment. My wife last night brought that very issue up about the signage along Sandhill. She goes to work at Mission Creek every day, and she just mentioned, did you know that there aren't any? Wow. Here you are bringing it right up after my wife did. Wow, good, you're on top of it. Anyway, the questions I have is then the walk zone, is that a legal definition, a
Yeah.
state definition of 1 mile, like a
That's a
circle
state
around the school?
definition.
1
Okay,
mile.
and then you mentioned are eligible to take the bus because of unsafe conditions. Is that something the state also defines, or do we define that?
So the state define, if we define the walk zone hazards,
Uh-huh.
and therefore if it's hazardous walk zones, then we can still be funded for those students being on the bus.
Oh,
Otherwise, we actually have to minus those students out of our count
mm-hmm.
and don't get funding for them.
Do we, so is this based, so you're surveying the students and the families, or like how is this data collected?
This is how many students we have living in those areas
Mm-hmm.
that are registered to Sand Hill Elementary that live in that space.
How do you know who's walking though? You know what I mean? Like that's,
So that's the part, we haven't surveyed the families. This is who's eligible to be on a bus.
okay.
So it's,
Okay.
their parents may be driving them, especially this year. You know, families may be driving them for all, there could be a couple kids actually walking, but they're eligible to ride a bus. So because we don't make reservations for our buses
Mm-hmm.
in transportation, we have to plan for every student to be on a bus that's eligible.
So for instance, like with this slide, when you say there's 204 in this zone, 100% are eligible to take the bus, you're saying that some of these kids are in fact walking.
They could
be walking in a hazardous condition, okay.
They could be. And so.
And does the other way around also work or not work? Like at the high school or middle school, there are kids who are not in the unsafe conditions. Can they take the bus anyway, or do you care?
Yeah.
There's not a bus stop near them.
But if they get to a bus stop,
If
they
they
can do
get to a bus
that?
stop, then yeah, we'll take them. But they would, for the high school, middle school, for them to get to a bus stop, they'd have to go across the school.
Ah,
So,
yeah,
because it's basically the Alta neighborhood.
right, Alta Drive,
So
right.
they have to come down Alta Drive and then they're on campus.
Right.
Um,
Okay, but yeah, you're not terribly worried about, not so much them, but whether if a kid who's in that non-zone gets to a bus stop, you're picking them up and taking them to school.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
So, the next slide. So our next steps is every 2 years, we're supposed to hold a committee to go through and identify the unsafe conditions. And so I'm working with that process with Dana to identify who to have at that committee, hold the committees, identify some unsafe conditions, possibly identify some solutions and what it would take to implement those solutions. And then we just have to keep notes of that and mark it as what's our hazard for documentation. And then as long as there's no major changes in the walk zones, like all of a sudden having sidewalks in Delta, then we only have to the committee only has to meet every 2 years to reevaluate the walk zones and just certify, yep, this is still hazards, or no, it's not, so.
So has there been a committee in the past?
We're working on that. In the last time the committee was formed, I'm not sure of, so I'm working on it now. I'm in my 3rd year with the district, and so we're getting it together.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Maureen?
Is this one of the committees that a board member can be part of or sit in on?
This is a committee to report to the state, so there's not any, no, there's no prohibition about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. It's one of my passions. Like I drive around and if I see something that's off or whatever, and it's a bus stop or there's a lot of turmoil, maybe that we don't normally see or whatever, I'll call in either to the bus barn or I just call the police if it's, and I'm just that Karen in the neighborhood, I guess, you know.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much. More
Thanks,
work for
Maureen.
you then, right, Maureen?
Part of the job.
So now we're at item number 4, Resolution 3G21. This was a presentation that we heard at the last board meeting, and we now have the resolution that was prepared by K&L Gates. we need a motion to approve and adopt this resolution. Ordinarily, I'd read it, but it's many pages long, 53 pages long. So I'm hoping that you all had an opportunity to review it, and if you have any questions.
And if you, as you
Madam Chairman,
remember,
I propose that we adopt, I move that we adopt the lengthy resolution, which if it were shorter, I would mention in my motion.
Thank you, John.
as you'll remember, the purpose of this resolution is to refund, or in layman's terms, refinance our bond that built all of our new schools and facilities, to provide savings in their tax rates to our community members. And so that's why the board has decided to take this on.
Okay.
Right, that was exactly the rehash I was looking for.
I was thinking layman's terms when I was reading it. I'm like, maybe they'll just put it in layman's terms. Yeah.
Because now it's bringing back the memories of Trevor and what he said specifically, now that you mentioned that.
It means that our taxpayers won't have as much money coming off of their tax statement. Okay, John has moved to approve and adopt Resolution 3G21. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Motion passes. And now we're at board development and linkage, the superintendent update.
All right, we'll start with the budget update, Ashley.
So,
And when you finish, will you add anything you want to add about capital projects?
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we'll start with our other funds then before we jump into our general fund. We're not seeing a whole lot of movement in any of our other funds currently, just due to the current dynamics of the school year. Our capital projects is sitting at about $527,000. As of right now, I'll sort of throw in a capital update at this point. As of right now, we've pretty much concluded all of the projects that we were working on that were being funded with this project and that were being funded with the state forest dollars, that $1 million that we transferred last year from debt service fund over to capital projects. That $1 million transfer paid for that early kindergarten portable that we have up and functioning, and we have some of our early learners in. And then it also paid for re-roofing Sandhill. So those projects have been completed. It also was paying for the new softball field that we currently have our girls softball team practicing and playing games on. So it covered that, and then it was also covering the finishing touches on our stadium. So those projects have been completed on the financial side. We're still waiting on some of the sign-offs from the contractors and such. So at this point, Joan, our facilities director, Dana, and I had briefly talked just the other day. We're going to be sitting down and having a meeting to talk about that $500,000 and how we can put that to best use within the district on some current facilities needs. So we're going to be doing that, and then after that, the conversation's had, I'm sure the
Facilities committee meet.
Yep. We'll sit there and look at current options. We do have some situations with our pumps for our wells and different things like that we've been deferring some of the maintenance on that we would be able to utilize this on. So we'll get some projects ideas put together and then bring it to a group. So that's where we are with that. Our debt service fund, we're currently sitting at about $750,000. April is a collection month for property taxes, so we're going to see that drastically increase here in preparation for our next bond payment this summer. ASB, they're slowly spending down some of the money from their temporary entities. They have been doing fundraisers and bringing money in that way. So I do expect to continue to see that grow slowly through the rest of the year. And our transportation vehicle fund, you're going to see this grow by interest only, which I think we're averaging about $17 to $18 a month right now with the lower interest rates. So until August, when we get our depreciation payment that Maureen was talking about earlier from the state for the buses that we currently have on our depreciation schedule. The goal right now is to build that fund, like Maureen was talking about, so that we can turn around and make some purchases of some buses and replace some of those older buses that we still have that we're not surplusing, but are no longer on the depreciation schedule. Okay, next. Enrollment. Piece that used to be my favorite. We moved down by a portion of an FTE this month, but in reality, we saw our enrollment grow in some other buildings, but we had some seniors graduate early. So that's why you're seeing sort of the offset there, that it doesn't look like we necessarily grew, but in reality, we actually did. We just had some early graduation, which we would see any year. So that's normal for about this time. You start to see your enrollment start to shrink as you have some seniors graduate. So it's staying pretty consistent at this point. Overall this year, we're looking at about a 6% enrollment decrease, which again is actually on the much lower side than what a lot of states, or what a lot of school districts saw across the state. So we'll see where that takes us going into next year. We are budgeting conservatively on enrollment going into next year, simply because we do not know enough of what type of impact our enrollment's going to see with whatever guidelines are going to be released before the start of next school year.
Can you just, it's not saying there, briefly, which one is the blue and which one is the orange?
So blue is our current enrollment,
Correct.
And orange is where we had budgeted based upon past trends.
Got it.
So normally, in the last 4 years, you always saw a reverse of that graph. Blue was our highest and orange was our lower bars. Unfortunately, this year, we never made it to budget. So that's where we're at. But that's why we're going to take a more conservative approach next year when it comes to the enrollment, because we simply just don't know what it's going to do. And because the state funds us from September to January on those budgeted numbers, and then they turn around and take that money back, that's part of the reason why we're seeing that impact on our revenues. Luckily, we caught it really early on, and we banked that money in order for them to take it back from our capacity, so that we weren't in a tough financial position come this time. So we're still doing okay there. Okay, so general fund. Our actual revenues to date, normally we'd be trending at about 57%. Right now we're trending at about 54%. That's that sort of pinkish semicircle up there towards the top. The fact that we're only trending just under 3% from where we had budgeted is significant, because we should be much lower than 3% less on the revenue side, based upon that loss of $3.5 million of revenue. Because think about it, our budget was $32 million, 3.5 million of that is over 10%. But due to some cost savings approaches that we took very early on in the year, and trying to find other ways to bring in revenues, we've been able to mitigate that impact and come up with about 7% additional revenue to offset that right now. Local sources, we will not hit 100%. Again, this trend is based upon your past history for the district, and past history for the district is that there's a local levy. So we got one portion of our levy collection that finalized the 2020 calendar year, but we will not get a levy collection in, this month, at the end of the month. So there is still some levy dollars trickling in for individuals that had not paid taxes or were late. And so we're this month we collected about $15,000 from that. But that's going to start to dwindle down as the year progresses and people get caught up on their property taxes. State sources, here you can see the 7% decrease. So we're currently trending at about 51%, where in a normal year we'd be right around 59%. And then the federal sources, you can see we're trending just under 60%, when normally we'd be about 52%. Yes, we got ESSER, but our administrators went hot and heavy against every federal grant they could get their hands on this year. and all of the competitive state grants, and wrote a massive amount of applications for funding to help offset the deficits we were going to be seeing. And we were successful in a good chunk of them to be able to bring in a lot of additional dollars. Now, unfortunately, those dollars are tied to certain fence post earmarks, specific activities they have to be spent on, but we were able to put plans in place to benefit our students utilizing those funds to help offset the deficits we were seeing.
So two little quickie questions.
Uh-huh.
Is some of that gain there showing up in the,
Yes, it is.
okay,
Exactly. So that pink circle is basically the average of all your other circles.
right. Okay, and then the second question is, based on what you've just described, can we reasonably expect to go over 100% by the end of the year on the green?
Yes,
Okay.
because of a piece of information I'll be giving you here shortly. We likely will be over it. So, we wrote our ESSER 2 grant application and our return to school plan, and because North Mason School District was ahead of the ball as far as getting kids back into school in person, we qualified very early on to get access to our ESSER 2 funding, which was approximately $1.7 million. My accounts payable accountant has been working tirelessly on going through all of our individual invoices from March 20th of 2020 to current, and itemizing them all in Excel spreadsheets and splitting them between ESSER 1 funding, ESSER 2 funding, ESSER 3 funding, and FEMA in order to specifically get them claimed as quickly as possible. So on Monday, I am putting in $1 million federal ESSER claim on our ESSER 2 allocation, and then next month I will be claiming the remaining $700,000. It will get us $1.7 million in the bank over the course of the 2 months. And 2 slides from now, you're going to see why that's going to be vitally important for the district going into September of this year.
And remember that those ESSER dollars are coming in as reimbursements for expenses we have already had to write checks for.
And a lot of these expenses were technically unbudgeted expenses. We did not budget to need to spend almost $1 million on new computers district-wide, because we didn't expect to have to start the school year fully remote. And with the needs in this district, it was very evident early on that we were going to need to provide a computer to every student to ensure that they could be as successful as possible in a remote setting. And so those costs were unbudgeted, but we got access to the ESSER funds and then we paid for it basically from fund balance, and now we're utilizing our ESSER funds to repay us to get the money in the bank so we can keep the lights on and keep the bills paid. So, on to expenses. So that green semicircle is one of the most important pieces in this presentation every single month. That's where we're tracking to be at year end for fund balance. Our board policy states we need to be between 8 and 10%. From that semicircle right there, that says 5.51%. We can't start September with 5.51% in the bank. We will not have money to pay the bills come November. Hence the reason of $1.7 million ESSER claim in the course of 2 months, because we're currently slated to end the year at about $1.9 million in the bank. Add your 1.7 to that, you just brought us up to 3.5. We're now at 10%, we can get through the fall. Okay, so as of right now, it's looking at our current trends. It doesn't know that I'm claiming the 1.7, obviously, so it has us slated at 5.51. But we've still been extremely restrictive in all of our spending, even knowing that the ESSER funds were coming in, because we know the importance of making sure that the money's in the bank to cover our expenses come next school year, when we're expecting to hopefully have more of what we could classify as a normal school year, at least for what you can see in a pandemic.
Excellent explanation of that.
Perfect. Okay. So our actual expenditures year to date, we're currently trending 5% under where we would be in any normal school year. Again, this is us cutting costs specifically to ensure that we're going to be where we need to be come next school year. Salaries and benefits are currently about 2% under. That's due to some layoffs we had right before the school year started. And our, the overall cost for basic education year to date is currently trending 3% under. It's not because we saved 3%, it's because we were very strategic in our costs that we picked up this year, renegotiating contracts, shopping around through different vendors for cheaper options, not purchasing your basic day-to-day office supplies in a lot of your operational departments, getting by with what you have, borrowing from other buildings, you know, really just watching what we're spending our money on in order to mitigate these state downfalls that we're seeing, and you're going to see in more detail in another slide. So let's go to that one. Okay. So that dark blue line right there that dips drastically down towards the right hand of the screen, that's our current year. So you can see all year we've been trending really high. We had to be. Not having a local levy to rely on come April, we needed to make sure we had the money in the bank to be able to uninvest around $1.6 million in the month of May and June in order to get the bills paid and keep the lights on. So we had to have a higher fund balance in order to make it through this time period. Thankfully, we've been able to do that. And then with the ESSER funds coming in, that will get us through the October time period. Can you scroll a little bit over to the right, Jackie? So what we're trying to do is get that dark blue line up to that green triangle. We have to be at that green triangle by September. That is that's the minimum it takes to get us through the fall. So if you take that just under 1.9 million number and add the 1.7 that we're going to claim on ESSER, that's what's going to get us to that green triangle. So by June, we should be closer to that. Okay, so this next one is extremely telling about the situation that school districts across the state are facing right now. Those top boxes is revenues first. If you scroll over to the right-hand side, on the revenues, you don't like to see red, because that shows places where technically we either budgeted or our past trends showed that we should have revenue there, and we don't. The very first one is a shortfall in levy collection, past due taxes. You can't technically budget for that, but it is a pandemic. Cash is tight, and so the money's not coming in as it would normally. You have, during a normal school year when you have your kids in the building full time, you have class fees, you have money coming in for, you know, purchasing milk or food items and such. All of that's not there this year, and so that's all budget shortfalls that we're seeing. And then investment earnings are obviously significantly down this year with our interest rates dropping. And rentals and leases, our facilities have been closed for a good chunk of the year. So you're not getting that rental money that we would normally be getting, so we're trending at about $20,000 under there. The biggest shortfall right there is that $3,045,000 from the state. That's what the state's currently, that's a portion of what the state's currently recovering from us for the enrollment shortfall and for the lack of transportation funding, since they have not been paying our transportation costs since February, and they won't through August. We're also seeing that $655,000 is the other offset of our state funding shortfalls. State revenues, when you budget for them, it's not a guessing game. You put in what your enrollment's going to be, and the state says this is how much money you're going to get. The calculator that you use to do this is basically a state form, and it's available right after the governor signs the budget. So it's based upon actual, real numbers. So these shortfalls aren't based upon a budget mishap. It's specifically related to the pandemic and what we're currently facing, and that's why school districts right now across the state are seeing the exact same thing. Thankfully, we only saw a 6% enrollment shortfall, because some districts are having to make up a much larger deficit than what we're facing. But when you factor in all of those pieces, the levy collection shortfall, and when we're talking levy collection shortfall, we're not talking about the lack of an April collection. We're talking about the missed property tax payments and such that we could budget for, and the lack of the rental fees and such. We're currently facing about a $3.8 million deficit from what we had originally budgeted for revenues this year. But when you scroll down and you start looking at your expenditures, you're going to see places where we made up the savings to ensure that we weren't going to be absorbing that full shortfall this year. In all reality, right now, the shortfall that we're seeing from that is $35,000, but that's strictly because we have cut everything that we can cut at this point in order to make it through to the fall. So we have increased costs, obviously, in our what would normally be deemed our ALE, our programs, due to increased seat capacity in our remote and online programs. So we're seeing increased costs there than what we had originally budgeted, because we didn't anticipate as many students participating in fully remote as what we've seen. And then we have additional costs in our categorical programs, just due to the significant needs that we're seeing in students this year. I know Leanna was talking about sort of that social emotional and that piece that students are struggling with this year. So there's money going out to help mitigate that, and so we're seeing increased costs. But overall, to be looking at a $3.8 million shortfall, primarily from the state, and to be able to state that we've been able to mitigate most of that and come out with a $35,000 deficit to be able to get us to the fall is great. So we, for our current situation, we're financially healthy. So that's what I have. Do you guys have any questions, comments, concerns?
Anybody?
Okay.
I just think you're doing a great job. I don't know how you're managing to make it happen.
I know, it's like
It's like pulling money out of the air.
We have a really, very, very good team, and
Good.
that's really what it comes
great.
down to.
That's great.
We're going to chain you to the desk and you can't leave.
I know, I'm scared.
It will work out.
It will work out.
It will work out.
All right.
Well, I think, even if we went bankrupt with our current
I know.
treasurer, economic manager, we would do so in great style.
We would, Sean, but we won't be there.
But we're not going to.
We're not going to
Yeah.
do that.
All right.
Thank you, John. Now we're teaching and learning.
Okay, so kids are back in school at all grade levels in a hybrid model a couple days a week. We're very pleased with that. I know we have probably a lot of you guys would like to be in school 5 days a week, and we are working hard on that. We have received the direction that we will be getting new guidance in the next couple of weeks for planning for fall to comply with the governor's requirement that all kids get to be in school 5 days a week in the fall, and how we're going to do that and still manage complying with some rules about keeping people safe. The rules are probably going to change, and we'll find out what those are, and we'll build plans around those and make sure our staff and kids are safe as we can keep them. In light of that, the age for being able to get vaccinated, if you choose to, in the state went down to 18 today, or 16 today. So all of our students at the high school that are in that age group that would choose to take them can take advantage of our shot clinics that we're doing in partnership with Peninsula Community Health on Wednesdays. And I think the school's going to make sure they know how to register in case they want to do that. Mm-hmm. We are also talking with our partners at the clinic about being able to provide on some other school days, and at the high school, opportunity for kids who have their parent permission, if they're not 18, to be able to receive those. And so we're going to work on that. And we are in talks that if the vaccines become available to younger students over the summer, that we will work with our partners at Peninsula Community Health to offer clinics for younger students to be able to get shots whose families choose for them to do so. So we'll have lots of ways to help people feel more safe as we go in to the fall. There will be, right now we have the ability to do some testing, some quick testing if you have symptoms, and antigen testing. We've only done a few with staff and students this spring, but it sounds like the federal government is going to fund that more, so that we can use that as another tool to help people feel safe and stay home and identify when they should as we go back to school in the fall. So we're really looking forward to being able to plan full weeks at school for our students and what that would look like. And that's what we're working on really hard right now. And, we're also looking at if we're going to be able to bring our youngest learners at least back more days this spring. And it's complicated because when the governor, stood up a few weeks ago and said, okay, we're changing it to 3 feet, they're changing the social distancing number to 3 feet for students, but to 6 feet for all the adults in the building who are working with the students. And those adults have to stay 6 feet apart from students who are staying 3 feet apart. So
Oh my gosh.
it's not just as easy as saying, oh good, we have a new rule and let's go.
Yeah.
And so we're working on how to make that happen, and we'll start with our youngest students probably. And we're also looking forward to what we have heard will be somewhat more lenient rules for the fall and how we can get kids back in school. So that's a big part of what I have to talk about.
I really appreciate your flexibility and your team's flexibility. It seems like we hear one thing and then they change it and now it's got to be something else. And
well, I know our kids are tired and our families are tired and our staff is incredibly tired and they are working so hard, and that's every single staff member, every bus driver, every custodian,
Yeah.
every parapro teacher and administrator. Everybody's exhausted, but we really do want to get our kids in school and serve our kids. On a really positive note, we've been on tenterhooks as OSPI has been negotiating with the Federal Department of Education about whether or not we would be required to do state testing this spring. And OSPI presented a really good scientifically based proposal for using a sampling methodology of just sampling kids around the state to be representative. And the feds don't like it. They want every kid to have to take the tests that would have to. So our state has responded and said, well, you gave us not just the spring, but into the fall to do this year's testing. So we're not doing any testing this spring. We'll keep talking to you about what that should look like in the fall. And the kids who would have taken the tests this spring, we'll take them in the fall. So what that means, if we have to do that, is if you were a third grader right now, when you're beginning your fourth grade class next year, you would take the third grade end of year test. If you were a 10th grader who should have taken the SBACs this year, you will take them at the beginning of your 11th grade year, not at the end of your 10th grade year. So that's what it looks like right now, but our state, I don't think we're satisfied with the response we've gotten from the feds. Unfortunately, I think I'm hearing the Department of Education is getting a lot of pressure from the Senate, including our own Washington state senators who feel strongly that testing is a good thing. And so it's going to take a lot more pressure from communities over the next few months to try to change some of that thinking in Washington. So, but on a good note, nobody's taking an SBAC test this spring, math, reading, or science. There are some special needs kinds of tests that students will still be taking, but and they'll still have to do the project-based assessments that they do in social studies and PE, and so.
When you're saying nobody is taking it, you're referring to North Mason?
Nobody in Washington.
Nobody, okay, that's even better.
Yes.
Okay, because then when everyone tests, it's more apples to apples.
Right, right. Yeah, actually, Superintendent Reichdahl had a press conference to discuss this yesterday, and usually, you know, when he does those, he tends to try to be fairly careful with his words and with his opinions about other organizations, but he was very clear about what he thinks of the stance that the Department of Ed is taking in Washington, D.C.
Right. Yeah, as always with testing, it's always that people, whether it's the media, whether it's professionals, whether it's whatever, use the tests for different things than they're designed for. And if you're doing apples to oranges, you get some really, really skewed stuff. But even when you're doing apples to apples and testing after a layoff of summer, you're going to see a drop. You would expect to see a drop, but if everyone's going to have a drop, you know they're going to compare everyone against everyone else, which is not what the test is designed to do. But anyway, enough said.
Yep. So that's teaching and learning.
Anything more on capital projects?
Well, I think the only thing is we do have one little piece that we have scheduled with a vendor with the softball field. We'll be putting up the batting cage over there. But then we're pretty much done with all the projects.
Cool. Well, thank you. Well, now we have upcoming board letter columnists. Art, you have April.
Yes, is there a...
Yes, I wrote down a note for a good idea for what you should write about.
Okay, go ahead.
We think that you should write about the refunding of the bond that you voted to approve tonight.
Okay.
And also include in that the motion that the board took last February to reduce those taxes for our taxpayers for that 1 year only by moving some of that state forest money in to pay the cost of the payments. So
Okay,
Ashley
if I
can
could
help
get
you
the
with that.
details from Ashley. Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And John, you have May, so you've got some
Yeah,
time.
I'm looking forward to that. Somebody will have to send me some stuff, and I will be happy to elaborate and whatever, and exaggerate.
Well, at the May board meeting, we can expect to be discussing our learning recovery plans for students as we get more back to normal or whatever that is going forward. And that plan does have to be approved by the board at the May meeting to meet all the timelines that we have, even though we haven't heard what's supposed to be in it yet. Maybe we will hear that by Monday. But anyway, that will be at the May board meeting, and that would be a really good topic for you to share with the community, John.
Well, that's fine. I'm sure there'll be some documents that go with that, so I'll have some language to play with.
Exactly.
And
Yeah,
Leanna,
that's great.
and Leanna, you have June. I have July, and Arla's up again in August. And now we're at assurance of organizational performance and policy review. We have a monitoring report here regarding ER 11, the district calendar. Has everybody had an opportunity to read that report?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Are there any questions or discussion?
You don't have a motion yet.
Well, go ahead.
I would like to move that we find the superintendent's performance to comply with ER 11.
Okay, thank you. So now, any comments or questions for the superintendent?
I'm just curious, is the midwinter break something that's going to be just continuing?
Yeah, that we agreed to that prior to this year, so that's.
I know
so
it's
now
next
it's
year,
in the,
but-
yeah.
Okay.
This is something that we negotiate with the
Yeah.
NMEA.
I think
And
that's great.
Yeah. Okay,
Comment?
sure.
I was expecting when reading the report to see sirens and whistles and bells and alarms go off because of the COVID changes, but you wrote a really nice way of
Yeah.
making it work. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 And we have found the superintendent's performance to comply with ER 11. And now we're at adjournment For the good of the order, the board and the superintendent, is there anyone who has anything that they would like to add at this point? Student board members as well?
I just wanted to say how thankful the students are with all the work that you guys have been doing, especially you guys. I can't even imagine with the capital funds and everything going on how hard it must be during this time, so thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to remind you all, you board members, that today is the day, the final day for your financial filing, the F1 report with the PDC.
Oh.
So if you haven't done that, go to your emails.
I didn't get an email reminder.
pdc.wa.gov, and you will
Say that again?
pdc.wa.gov, G-O-V, and just follow the,
Right.
directions.
I wait for that.
Is
and
it
I didn't
as
get one.
like laborious every time, or is it just because it was my first
every
time?
time.
Every year, you can
So
sometimes.
every day.
It's like, wow.
I know, it took me an
everything about me.
You can do, oftentimes, you can just do the short part and say, this is the same as last year. You get to
We
do
weren't
that
able to do
2 or
that
3
this
times.
year.
You weren't? Okay.
No, well, you're new,
No,
so
I
I
was
wasn't
hoping
able to
that-
say it's the same as last year. I had to walk through the whole
Oh,
thing.
boy. So I better get to.
Not to mention getting a new
Tonight.
username and a new password. and- Oh, my gosh. And then there's this caption at the top that said, nobody's in the building, everybody's working from home. So, it was crazy.
Oh, that's true. In Olympia, nobody's going to
No,
work yet.
No.
So-
Okay,
So
anybody
what-
else for the good of the order?
Yeah, one other comment. This sort of is good for the order, but it's more good for where I'm at. The Girl Scouts, where I'm at, we're opening tomorrow.
Oh, nice. That's exciting.
I
All
have 2
right.
people coming for the
Nice.
weekend.
Well, somebody.
That's somebody.
more than
And we're formally opening
Yeah.
at Camp Lama Cloud. We're not opening at Camp St. Albans. We are also opening at Camp River Ranch, which is over in Carnation, and we're not opening any other camps. But I'm opening, and
That's exciting.
yeah, so
Yeah.
2 people.
At least 2, right? Anybody else for the good of the order? Okay, then the board assessment of the meeting. John, you have the assessment. Do you have it in front of you?
Yeah, I do. It's real small, but I'm somewhat familiar with it. General meeting behavior, everything seemed to be in order regarding the various criteria. Members listened attentively, avoiding side conversations. I was paying real good attention to that. I didn't see or hear anything. And participation was balanced. The meeting proceeded without interruptions or distractions. Everybody seemed well prepared. We followed the agenda, and everything was well planned. And I don't see any governance principles other than, we did do our assessment, which is part of them. So I would give us a satisfactory on it, all the criteria that we have.
Okay, thank you, John. Our next meeting date is May 20th at 6:30 right here in the office boardroom, masks on. And I guess we can have a few people here. Maybe
Is that the
yeah,
limit, this 5?
I think so,
that's
yeah.
on our current.
Yeah, because of our numbers. So if there's nothing else, the meeting is adjourned.
Will that be on Zoom or what?
No, it'll be just like this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you can be on the phone or you can come in with a mask on. We're all wearing them.